So just went down and got some essential supplies in the old bomb truck. Some template making cardboard with bonus beverages. Now I've been losing water out of the old bomb truck for a while, and I haven't been able to find it. Last weekend I was under here doing an oil change and found a little bit of coolant sitting on top of the starter motor. So I thought next time I run it, I'll have a look at it when it's under pressure, and sure enough, when she's running, right on that back head bolt underneath the the exhaust manifold, she's leaking at a fairly rapid rate. So don't know what I'm going to do there. Could be head off, could be a heat gasket, or it could just be coolant coming out of that bolt. I don't know, is there any galleries that those head bolts go through? I don't know. Might just need a little crank up. Would that be bad? So I jumped ahead and started trying to take this thing apart, not really thinking very clearly about what I was doing, and took the exhaust manifold off, and it gave me access to the lower head studs and head bolts, and had a bit of a look-see and could see a little weepage around the base of the head. So I suspect that the water is getting out between the head and the block face, the deck, I think that's what it's called. So which would indicate it's probably I don't know, some kind of damage to the head gasket. But the fact that the water is coming up past the threads anyway, from the deck up into the head area, or the little space in between there, you know, there's got room. It could actually still be coming from the top of the head bolt. I don't know, really hard to see. Access ain't great. So I jumped ahead and just thought, I'll just whip that bolt out. Didn't even think about the whole reason I'm in there is because there's a bolt going into a water gallery, and then I just had this fountain of coolant start spraying out all over the place. So I had to chuck the bucket under there and chuck the head bolt back in, and then start draining from the front, from the radiator, with the little flash little spigot. I'll show you. Probably the coolest thing about this aftermarket eBay radiator that I've got sitting in the bomb truck is that little spigot right there for draining the radiator. It's quite slow, but it's still better than trying to dump the bottom hose. So this is the culprit here, this little sucker here, and what I could see was moisture right here on the old the deck there, sort of thing. So I'm thinking that there's hopefully it's not this one. Can't see any water in the vicinity of that one. Anyway, I'm thinking it's that little sucker there, coolant getting up past the threads in the deck, and just, you know, gathering around here, having a little coolant party in there, and then for whatever reason there's not a good seal right there at the deck to head juncture, and I'm losing a bit of fluid coolant out of there. So my plan for my quick temporary fix is to clean all that up in there as best I can, clean up the bolt. I've just run a little tap down into there just to kind of clean it out. I didn't force it in with any kind of toolage, it's just by finger. I didn't want to cut taps. Apparently they're not the same as thread chasers, so I didn't want to kind of get in there and give it some jandle and kind of then open up the thread and then have a weak thread. So So I've just kind of given it a bit of a clean, and I've jammed rags and stuff down there, trying to clean it all up as best I can, so I can put a little bit of silicone around there and get that little sucker back in there, and then put it all back together and chuck the coolant back in, see if it holds water. It'd be really cool if it did, but I've got a funny feeling I'm going to be back into this, because it's just normally how it rolls with doing a little temporary fix for this sort of thing. In the perfect world, I would be pulling the heads and doing all the head gaskets and stuff and redoing the whole lot all at once, but we're in lockdown at the moment. Getting parts and getting materials and stuff is kind of pretty tricky, and hopefully we'll be back at work in a week or so anyway, so then I can maybe order some bits. But I kind of want to keep my bomb truck going. I don't want to be waiting on parts with this sucker. Amateur tip, if you undo the radiator cap, more coolant comes out like a fountain again. Amateur tip number 2, if you try to squirt some air down there, more coolant comes out like a fountain again. This is confirming my theory. Squirting a bit of air there. Don't know if you can see that bolt hole. This might not show at all on the camera. Bubbles forming in the coolant. From blowing a bit of air at the seam there. So it's definitely between the block and the heard me, what's it, the deck. Just drain that coolant back again. What I'm hoping is if I can get some RTV sealant into, is that it? Into that sort of seam. It's not really under any pressure other than the coolant pressure, but if I can get the sealant into the threads, hang on, I can get the sealant into some of the threads, and even get some sort of, maybe sort of just kind of find its way into that kind of gap between the head and the deck. I don't know why it's doing that. I mean, I have to have a look, but I'm pretty sure the head gasket's supposed to be a part of that, isn't it? I don't know, we'll see. This video just, what in the name of sweet Jesus is going on over there? This video might just get binned into the embarrassing things I did during lockdown. So I'm going to try and dry out that bolt hole as much as possible. Every time I try and squirt air or anything, do anything, it just pours more and more coolant out onto the floor, not into the bucket. Hey guys, I just wanted to quickly interrupt this episode and just politely ask you to subscribe if you haven't done already. It's free. Hit the little bell off to the side somewhere for notifications, and any comments, questions down below. On with the show. Just gonna stuff a rag in there a few times and see if I can get it to dry off somewhat, but whether it works or not, I don't know. Like, it might. It's a whole lot less work than taking the intake off, taking the heads off, taking the dizzy out, carb, all of the other pieces, all those bits that make the motor go. Most of them I don't know how they work. Alright, a little bit of air in that seam again. You can definitely see those bubbles forming. And just remember, this is not a how-to video, this is just like how I'm making a quick fix on this to keep it on the road in the short term till we can get the time and the money to do it all proper, like, you know. Birds are very chirpy this afternoon. It's early afternoon here in New Zealand on a, I don't know what day it is, I think it's Tuesday. Yeah. Come on. Actually, I wonder if I can give that a ear. Alright, leave that to sit for a bit, and then come back and have a go at squirting some RTV all over the old bolt and put that back in there. The RTV I've got is like a red RTV, which is good for all sorts of stuff like that. I don't know whether my biggest concern is kind of putting it in when there's still some moisture in there, coolant and stuff, because glycol, nothing seems to stick to glycol very well. I've got some plumber's tape, but I'm not going to use that. That'll mess up the torque settings. It'll make it torque feel tighter than it actually is, and I'll give the bolt a good wire brush before I put it back in, and hopefully that might work. And I suppose I'll let it cure up and that for a while before I chuck the coolant and that back in and fire it up and see whether it even's going to hold or not. So might go and do that. Oh, what's that? I think something arced out on one of these head bolts because there's all this copper wire all stuck onto it. Nothing obvious in there. And yeah, so I'll leave that to dry off a little bit, and then I'll come back and I'll chuck that bolt back in and then put it all back together and see what happens. It's either going to work or it's not. Here we go. Now I'm going to put a bit on here, just especially up around the base of the threads, or that end of the thread. My theory is that's where it's leaking between the block and the head, so I'll give it a little bit more there. Hopefully that'll be enough to seal it up for a little bit anyways. A little bit around the head, just for bad measure. Alright, let's make a mess. Straight away making a mess. Alright, where's my... Right. Oh, it's up there. I'm just going to pinch it up with this, and then I've got the torque wrench ready to roll down there. So don't judge. £65 foot-pounds according to the interweb. Yeah, double check that. I have still got it on there. Yep. There she is. I did notice before I undid the bolt, I thought I'll just try and torque it up, and it did move a little bit, so I don't know whether it's always been a little bit looser than it should have been, but we shall see. Alright, I suppose I just got to put it all back together, let that cure up for some time, and then chuck the coolant back in it and see whether it can hold its water. As dear mum says, hold your water. She doesn't sound like that though. A little bit. Just wait for that bird to finish. Finished. Kid over the road's having a roaring old time on the trampoline, so good on him. Simpler times. These birds are really noisy today. And yeah, now I've just got to put all this back together. I've got a huge puddle of coolant, antifreeze, whatever you want to call it, under the truck now, because I had the bucket up the front under the radiator when I managed to shoot another waterfall out of the bolt hole onto the starter motor and everything underneath. Should probably rinse all that off somehow. Not quite sure yet. Probably should, eh? Yeah. Anyway, start putting the exhaust manifold back on. Yes. Maybe mop up that stuff under the floor. Probably a good place to start. So that's the manifold bolted back on. The easy part anyway. I've still got to hook the pipe up to it yet from the underside, and this thing's got a Jag steering rack in it, so it's a rear mount rack, so the rack is right in the way of where I need to go. I think from memory I can get them started from the top, and then you have to get up underneath there to tighten them up properly. And there's one that's tucks up against the block, which is, you just can't even see it from down there. You're just flying blind the whole way, and that's the hardest one to get going. But three bolts I've got to put in there. These have been, the studs have been taken out of these ram's horns and they've been tapped, so they're bolted up from the underside rather than the old rusty studs that always rust out and snap. So that's next. Now get covered in anti-seize, because you always put it on there and then you rub most of it off trying to get the bolts in place. Come on, get in there. Barmaid. Oh, that's pretty much where it needs to sit. And I've got header wrap on there with those real razor sharp little steel zip ties. They're always good for cutting you up. Well, got that underside all bolted up, the pipe onto the manifold. It was a shit fight, so I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking and talking at the moment. But we got there in the end. I forgot how miserable it is actually to do that one little job. Just to get those 3 bolts in there is just a mission. Top, bottom, scratch arms, stuff like that. So, but it's done now, so I'm going to leave this to that sealant to cure up real good before I put any fluid up against it and start it up and put some pressure on it. But we'll see what happens. Fingers crossed it all works out. If not, I might slow it down at least. I have got one of those little cubey things you stick in the radiator, but I don't really like the idea of those that much. I feel like they could block up stuff that's not supposed to get blocked up, but we'll see. Cross that bridge when we come to it. Morning guys, back on the bomb truck. Just got to finish topping off the coolant. I haven't got much left, so I'll do a bit of a mix of some water and coolant, and if it leaks again anyway, I haven't gone out and spent moonbeams on buying lots of new coolant, so I'm kind of recycling the coolant that was in there, because at the moment I just can't go down to the parts store and whatever and get some more because it's all closed. Got to hook up the battery, fire it up and run it up to temp and see if I can get any air bowls and crap out and see whether this leak repair is going to hold. It's a 50-50 kind of thing, so it wasn't really the ideal way to repair it, but even if it's just a temporary thing and it holds for a while, I'll be happy with that till everything opens up again and I can get gasket sets and stuff like that, take the heads off, measure the bores and whatnot and figure out. I think it's about 40 thou over this motor, but I don't have any accurate paperwork to confirm that until we take the heads off, so might be smart money to fire it up, move it outside in case it burps and stuff all over the garage carpet again. accurate that is though. As far as an actual measure goes, I just know where it's happy on the needle, the little needle thing. So yeah, just run that up to temp and then go home again and see whether it's jetting out that hole again. Well, that under the head, not a hole. Hopefully there's not a hole. Well, it didn't look that close, but yeah, pretty certain it's just bad seal just under that bolt between the head and the deck. So hopefully my bodgy little fix is going to fix it for a little while until things settle down again and we can have some normality back and I can get some parts and stuff. I've got time at the moment, strangely enough, sure because of lockdown, but yeah, just not the parts and the materials I need. But anyway, just go for a little test and check back in a minute. Well, back for my little test run, and so far so good. Got my lead lamp in the engine bay so you can have a look. Real hard to see. We're looking down just under that exhaust manifold to that head stud down there, and so far I think it's dry. There's a little bit of silicone down there, but then we got it hot enough to run the old electric fans come on and stuff, so it should be under full pressure now. Let it cool off again, and once it's cool enough that I can stick my fingers down there without scorching them on the old exhaust manifold, I'll just feel around under there and see if there's any wetness, and then check the fluids again and see whether they went down or whatever, and take it from there. I just thought I'd top up the power steering fluid. It was a little bit low. I just poured it in and it just went all over the place and overfilled it. So if you're in a pinch and you need to get some fluids out of your power steering reservoir and you've got a little bit of clear hose, clear is better because that way you can see the trans fluid coming, because it doesn't taste like raspberry juice. You can sort of siphon a little bit out if you haven't got one of those little fluid removal doohickeys. One of those would be a good idea to have, I reckon. Might write it on my list on the fridge of things to buy, and I need some more trans fluid. So that's that done. I haven't got any brake clean, so I've made a fairly substantial mess now all across the cross member and under the truck.
Coffee?
Yes, please.
I'll pour it now.
Yep. Well, that's about it for this little video on me working on the bomb truck during lockdown with limited supplies and stuff. But I actually think we might have plugged that leak up for now. Will it hold? I don't know. How long will it hold? Don't know that if it does hold either. But it's holding for now, so that's a win in my book. Pretty rough and ready, but so the old bomb truck. But yeah, we may end up having to revisit all of that later on. That'll be fun. Well, that's it for this episode of trying to fix that little water leak. I think I've been sort of successful. Hopefully it'll hold for a while. How long? I don't know. How well? I don't know. It might probably start sort of weeping and seeping in a little while, and then it'll just blow out again. If that happens, then I think we might be looking into doing the heat gaskets and that on this little small block. But yeah, that's another problem for another day, but it's not that big of a problem, I guess. Bit of a learning curve. I haven't really done much internal engine stuff before, so got to start somewhere, I guess. Might as well start on the bomb truck. yeah, as you can tell, it's coffee time, so I'm going to go and have a coffee and figure out how to clean up this mess underneath the front of the truck with all the trans fluid I just spilled all over the place. Garage carpet. Silly. Just a silly idea. It's alright if you're going to do Pilates in your garage or something like that, but if you're going to work on old shit like this, probably not the best thing to have. Can't sweep it. Can't hose it out. I suppose you could hose it out. Need lots of brake clean to clean up all the oils and stuff, because it just sits in there. It doesn't go anywhere. But anyway, coffee time. As always, thanks for watching. Thanks to all the new subscribers that have come on board lately, from the 49 to 54 Chevy page on Facebook. Good page. If you're not on there, go and check it out. Cool cars. If you haven't subscribed, that'd be awesome if you could. And notifications bell just tells you when new videos come out. That's about it really. So till next time, peace.